Hi, thanks for watching this Axeman video tutorial on Sony Vegas. I'm Keith, and today we're going to be looking at the project settings, or the properties, inside Sony Vegas. To get to the properties, all you do is go to File, and you'll find Properties right down here. There's also some shortcuts depending on the window layouts that you have. As you see, one here, and another one here, and over here. I will just click on one of those to get to the project properties. Now, all I'm going to do today is just go over a industry standard 1920 by 1080 full HD project setup. So first we'll look at all of the different templates that Sony Vegas provides. And there's quite a lot. And if you have Sony Vegas Pro, you have more options than you will at Sony Vegas Suite or something similar to that. So let's go over the settings for an industry standard 1920 by 1080 full HD project setup. Your width 1920, height 1080. That is your resolution. Field order leave at none. Pixel aspect ratio 1 or square. And then output rotation leave at 0. Now your frame rate is going to be adjusted based on what type of footage you're actually using, but it's standard to have at 30 frames a second, which is actually 29.970 frames a second. You're going to leave the stereoscopic 3D mode off, and now the pixel format, you can probably get away with just 8-bit, because 8-bit is going to give you all of that 1920 by 1080 resolution, all the colors, it's going to look very nice. The only thing that going up to 32-bit floating point will do is enable you to have more information along with your rendered out videos. That's getting into things like alpha channels and other pretty complex layers. It's also something you want to have if you're going to utilize 3D mode and things like that. But your basic average industry standard, you're going to want to just leave it at 8-bit. I've had no problems with the full resolution rendering quality of good, but you can always bump yourself up to best if that works better on your machine. Motion blur type leave at Gaussian, or however you say that. And the deinterlace method is good to just leave at blend fields. Deinterlacing is something we're going to get into in a later tutorial, along with alpha channels I mentioned before, and some other things that we'll get into. It's a good idea to leave this option checked so that when you put a video onto your timeline that is not set up to your current project settings, it will prompt you, it will ask you to see if you would like to change the project settings to match that media, which is sometimes pretty nice. I don't want to though. But that is a good idea to leave checked. You're going to want to leave the pre-rendered files folder at the default, and then you have the option to choose to start all new projects with these settings. On the audio side of things, you're almost always going to be using stereo, but if you have Sony Vegas Pro, you can use 5.1 surround, and that will enable some more options for you. Number of stereo buses is going to be left at 0, unless you're into some pretty wild audio mixing and sends and returns and things like that. For sample rate, your audio files are going to have either 44.1 or 48. I have mine set at 48 because that's just typically what I do all of my recordings in. But if you have somebody sending you a file, you're gonna, and it might sound a little weird if you have it set at 48. Just check its property settings and then match it with whatever you've got. But your most typical files are going to be 44.1 or 48. Bit depth of 16, again, I've had no problems at 16. You could go up to 24, but you're not going to do that unless you're, again, getting into some pretty serious audio files, larger audio files, raw files, and things like that. Your standard is going to be 16. Resample and stretch quality, put it at best, because it's nice to have the ability to speed your audio up or slow it down. And if you have to do that, you want that done with the best quality possible. Again, you're going to leave your recorded files folder at the default. Your ruler is where you have the options to set your samples, times, seconds, times frame. That's what you see here on the timeline, how to keep yourself organized. I like to have time and frames. That gives me the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and then point down to the actual frames. But you want to set it to whatever you're comfortable with. Measures and beats, this is your metronome setting. And most royalty-free music is going to be recorded at 120 beats per minute. So it's a good idea to just go ahead and leave it set at 120. Again, most music is in a 4/4 time signature, but if you have one that's odd and not syncing up, maybe it's a 3/4, so drop it down and see if that helps. Or if it's something really wild, it's 5/4 or 6, which is actually also the same as 3, and yeah, you get the point. And you're going to want to leave this just set at quarter. Summary is just some information you can add into the video file once you render. And audio CD is probably something you're not really going to be utilizing Sony Vegas for. So once you have your project all set up, you can go ahead and save your template, which is kind of nice. As you can see, I have an Axeman Video 30 that I use for most of mine, but if I need to bump myself up to 60 frames a second, I can do that real quick just by changing my templates. So thanks for watching this Axeman video tutorial on the project settings or properties